Other sport that, we've talked about a little bit, and, unfortunately it did not end, their season did not end how we hoped it would, is the baseball team. And there has been a lot of news on the baseball front here over the last couple of weeks. And I know I have not done a great job talking about it just because I've had so much other stuff going on. But I felt like, since we have a little bit of a break in the action, wanted to talk a little bit about that. And the big news is that Justin LeBron is back. The other big news is that Rob Vaughn got extended. So the head coach, Rob Vaughn, does get extended for 5 more seasons. He obviously has done a very good job in getting the baseball team to have the success that they have had. The next thing that you want to see out of him in that progression is being able to win in the regionals, right? You've had two regionals now that they have unfortunately went 0 and I believe he's 0-4 in regionals now. So that is something that you're definitely going to want to see change. Next season you want to try to be able to host, and then obviously getting home field advantage and being able to host that regional goes a long way. That is what I really, when you're looking at a guy like that, he gets Alabama into a position where this past season Alabama went 41-18, 13th in RPI, just, was a really good team the majority of the season. But when you think about the SEC, especially in the regular season, and the SEC did not have the best postseason show out that they could have had. But the SEC, had, I believe, 8 regional hosts, and it is just a conference of absolute dominance, right? When you're talking about baseball, the SEC is the dominant conference. And so when you think about something like that, that's what you have to consider, because with the SEC being so dominant in that sport, you can be a good baseball team and still be in the bottom half of the SEC. And that's what Alabama was in this season, right? So that's where you're going to want to see, obviously, getting some additional pitching, whether it be out of the high school ranks, development, or out of the transfer portal. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. Getting some additional hitting to come in around Justin LeBron. Again, we'll talk about that here in a second. But the big thing, and first and foremost, is getting a guy like Justin LeBron back. Because when you get a guy like Justin LeBron back, what it does is it, centers your team. It gives you, he's your captain, he's your main guy, and he's the guy that, I'm sure every team in America wanted him. He was a Golden Spikes finalist. He was a guy that, for a long time, this season, it really looked like he might even win the Golden Spikes Award. It slowed down a little bit when it got into conference play, but for a long time, it really looked like he, may even have that locked up. And so when you have a guy that's that good on your baseball team, it means that other people want to come play with him, right? It's the same way in the professionals, right? When you think about, a guy like Steph Curry, a guy like LeBron, or if you go to baseball, you have guys like Aaron Judge or guys like Juan Soto or whoever, right? You have guys that people want to play with. And so when you have somebody that people would like to play with, that goes a long way. And so Alabama has started off very, very strong when it comes to baseball recruiting. They have already landed 5 commits out of the transfer portal. 3 of those were pitchers. And then you have 2 big hitting. Currently, both of them play second base. Obviously, they will not both play second base coming on to Alabama's team next season. I'm sure one of them will solidify the middle infield because you are going to be missing your second baseman. But, you have a guy in Justin Osterhaus, which is the highest ranked guy per 64 Analytics. 64 Analytics has him as their 53rd ranked recruit or 53rd ranked transfer portal guy. He hit last season 328 with 16 home runs, 46 RBIs. He is a guy with serious power. He played at Purdue Fort Wayne, so he played at a pretty small school. Not a conference many people have probably heard of. But, that's what you're looking at, especially in the baseball sense. A lot of baseball teams nowadays are built on transfers. Honestly, even more than what you're seeing in the basketball front, right? And obviously Alabama's team from a basketball standpoint, we've talked about it at length, has a pretty even mix of freshmen, returners, and transfers. A lot of these baseball teams, obviously, you want to have your returners, but a huge percentage of these baseball teams, especially that are making it to Omaha, are having a decent amount of transfers come onto them, right? Whether it be Arkansas, I know Tennessee did it a couple over the past couple of years. You have some teams in the SEC that are bringing in, LSU did it very famously. Paul Skeens was from Air Force. Mikey White was from NC State. You have these guys that played on these other teams and decide, hey, we're going to go to this other team, whether it's for an NIL payday, whether it's for, to play for a national title, whatever the reason is, you're stacking the team, and that allows you to, just from a baseball team, there's a lot of guys on that team. And it's just a different type of system, because when you're looking at baseball as compared to like a football, somebody that's a good hitter, could be just under recruited. There's a lot of baseball teams out there. When you're talking about football, there's a size, speed, skill thing that a football player that's an SEC caliber guy you can kind of look at. Not to say there's nobody that's that caliber that's in the lower levels, because of course there is. It's just a completely different mindset. When you're looking at baseball, with the number of high school teams there are, the number of people that are playing baseball, and just the, multitude of ways that somebody can impact the game on the baseball field. If they're crazy fast, they steal a ton of bases, or if they have a cannon for an arm, they're awesome in the outfield, or whatever the case may be. These are things that sometimes, go under recruited. And so some of these lower level teams, you see a lot of transfers up. You see a lot of, community college going into, higher level baseball. That is a very, very, very common thing when you're talking about baseball. Honestly, similar to the major league system, right? You have guys playing their way up through the farm system to get to the major league team. That's how some of these higher level teams like Alabama and others are having to look at some of these smaller schools, is their pseudo farm system, because that's where you're developing some of your lower level talent. Not to say you're not going to get anybody at the high school level, because of course you need that. But once you get above the higher level talent, now you have a baseball team that can actually compete at the highest level. So Alabama, again, has done that fairly quickly. Alabama has 5 guys now committed, 3 pitchers and your 2 middle infielders. So we'll be very curious to see who else they add. I know there's been a lot of stir after Alabama got Justin Lebron to, reaffirm his commitment to play for Alabama next season. From the rumors that were out, obviously he had tons of offers, but, LeBron was committed to play for Alabama. There was not really any major concern that he was going to be going somewhere else. So the fact that you're able to get him back just, solidifies how good your team can be for next season.